Okay, so it seems that we are live. So welcome to my show, dear Lenka, and I've got this amazing guest here today, and that is Cassandra Alexis. Welcome to my show.
Hello, thank you so much, my dear Lenka. How are you?
I'm great. I'm so happy to have you here. I'm just going to give our audience a bit of a background about you, because I've known you for over a year.
Yes.
And I've seen you grow, I've seen you expand, I've seen you do amazing stuff. And I'm so proud of you, and I really wish you all the best. And for people who don't know you on my profile, because Cassandra, where are you based? You are in?
I am in Houston.
You're in Houston, yes. So I don't know if I have many followers from Houston, but let's see. We are about to find out. So Cassandra is a best-selling author and one of the co-authors of the Unchained Goddess, which is, I believe it's a project for women, correct?
Yes, it is. It's really about unchaining Black women, the different stories and experiences that we've had as Black women from around the world.
Oh, wow, I love that. Oh, that's so great. And then also you are the CEO of Opulent Outcomes Coaching and Consulting, marketing strategies, and a chief empowerment officer to your clients. And I love that because you mentioned it in every of your podcasts. So that brings me to you being a podcaster and a host of the Crowned Opulence Podcast. And that's what I would love to talk about, if that's okay with you, because I get really inspired by your podcast and I get inspired by what you do. And that is also basically, I'm now creating my own podcast, my own online show. So we have the expert in the house and I'm going to ask you some questions about this.
Let's do it.
Just before we talk about your podcast, what do you like the most, like out of these three? You're a consultant, you're a co-author or author, and you are a podcast. So which area is like the one that lights you up the most?
It's really hard to pick just one because all of them tie into something different in me, and they all have different purposes that tie back into who I am. I would say if I really, really, really had to pick only one, it would probably be my podcast.
Yeah, and I think you're doing so great with your podcast. I've seen you. Let's just tell our audience that it's not just an audio podcast, it's a video podcast, right? Because you're on the video, you're on show. And I know that your podcast is featuring mostly, well, basically it's helping Black women get the opulent outcomes that they desire in life and business through conversations, confronting the hard, messy, and necessary things that we don't talk about enough as Black women, while gaining the marketing savviness needed to launch and build our empires. Vampires. I love that.
Yes.
So it's such a beautiful idea because you are such a great ambassador for Black women. I don't really like the term Black women. I don't really want to like label people, but I like that you are bringing all these women together because I think you have very like distinguished features as Black women. Like you're really strong, you're so powerful. Like when I hear you or anyone, like any other Black woman, you're so powerful in my eyes. Like your voice is so strong, you're always so down to earth, you know, like I'm flying around and you're like, no, I'm down. Like you're so grounded, and I love that about you guys. So I have like, you have my I admire you basically. And if you talk about your podcast, so can you tell us a little bit about when this idea started? How did you get to podcasting? Where did it come from? Tell us your start.
It actually started kind of randomly, to be honest. I was in a course by Gina DeVee called Gateway to Your Dream Business. And one of my accountability partners, we were doing our homework and I sent her a screenshot of what I was working on. And she saw that part of it said I wanted to do a podcast. And she was in a podcast course. And she sent me the information for the course. I joined and I was like, this is what I wanted to do. I initially wanted to do a blog, and it was really difficult for me to write, which is interesting that now I am actually a published author and a best-selling author.
Yeah.
But I started trying to do a blog and it was not working out well for me. And so I did this course to teach you how to create a podcast. And I created my show, and I really created it to give Black women something that I personally needed at the most difficult point in my life.
Oh.
And what I have found is other women listen to my show. And I got the most incredible email from someone, and we can talk about it later. And it was just like, wow, it really showed the impact of the show and why I'm doing it. But it kind of just like I said, stumbled upon it. It was something I wanted to do, but I hadn't put any action behind it. My accountability partner saw it, and it started me down this road. And now here I am with Crowned Opulence.
Wow, that's so beautiful. And I kind of remember your beginning, and you didn't really talk enough about your podcasting, and a few months later I was like in a different leadership program, and I don't really scroll much, but like your things popped up on my Instagram, and I was like, wow, like you look so professional, and you've got your equipment set up, and I remember your Eiffel Tower behind you, and it's your dream to come to Paris, and I'm so close to Paris, so I feel like it's so beautiful to have these dreams, and you really follow your dreams. Like that's what I love about you.
Yeah.
Was it hard at the beginning to like get it off the ground?
It was hard for me, but not in the normal circumstances. So the reason it was hard for me is the week the course started, I found out I was being laid off from my job. So mentally, my mindset had to shift, my energy had to shift to figuring out now what happens with my life. And what I decided in the midst of it was, no, my plan was to start a podcast. I'm going to start a podcast regardless of what someone else has going on. You know, my previous employer, they did what they needed to do, but that doesn't get to dictate and change my plans. So I continued with what I said I was going to do, create a podcast. So that was the only reason why it was difficult, because I wanted to finish it at the end of the course. So to complete it, basically, I created the idea and all of the components, found the guests, set everything up. I basically created the whole show in 4 weeks. From starting working on it to going live.
That's so awesome.
Yeah. That's why it was hard for me. Otherwise, no, it wasn't that hard.
I love this story. I didn't know this. And basically, you know how we sometimes we are like playing with some ideas, and then and we have time, so we don't do much. And then like when you got laid off, it was like, okay, now is the time. I probably abstracted this because I have to move on this direction. And you're doing so great on this journey.
Thank you.
So where, for example, for our podcaster that start, okay, let's say some people that are playing with this idea, you said it's possible in 4 weeks. I believe your podcast comes out every week.
Yes.
And how or where do you find your speakers?
So I find them a number of places. In the very beginning, a lot of my speakers or my guests were my friends, my family. I've had them on the show, different podcast groups, different Facebook groups, different people that I follow on Instagram. I do various searches for them. Those are pretty much the key places that I have found people. But yeah.
That's so great. So it's not really so hard actually to find speakers, because I found you, like I've got many people lined up that are coming on my show, and maybe it's one of the things that people are scared of, or yeah, it could be like finding the guests. The second thing that they might be afraid of is the technical part of it. So did you invest a lot of money into technical side, or did you just start with what you had and then you like continued? I love your microphone, by the way.
Thank you. So let me go back 1 second to what you just asked. Pinning your niche, it may not be difficult. If you have something very specific, like, I don't know, some kind of scientific thing, that may be a lot, more challenging to find a guest. But if you tap into your circle, so if you were into this very niche scientific thing, hopefully you have other people, groups and communities that you're in and tapping into that. In terms of setup and equipment, no, the only things that I bought were this headphone, this microphone. I had my headphones already, which I don't really use anymore, but I bought this microphone and then I have a ring light. Everything else I already had. Now, there are many different types of expenses that go into creating a podcast that are not necessarily technology that you have to go and purchase a tangible thing, but that are needed for your show to exist, for your show to grow, and things like that. But those things do exist.
And can you share with us maybe what brand microphone do you have, or what's the price code for this?
So I don't remember the brand of my microphone. I got it on Amazon. It was less than $100. And it came with a little carrying case. So it is portable. I can pack it up and I can take it in different places. I've recorded episodes from my boyfriend's house and things like that. So it is portable. It came with a case. What I would recommend is that you get a microphone that is actually for podcasting. And there are various types. There are very expensive types of microphones, $200-$300, but you don't have to invest in that level. And I actually would not recommend it, because at least until you get started, and see if you're going to do it. What people don't realize is there is a lot that goes into having a podcast show. And most podcast episodes or most podcast shows itself do not go past 7 episodes. So most people abandon their shows after the 7th episode.
That's interesting.
If they make it to 7. Yeah.
Yeah. So did you have any sort of doubts when you were around 7 episodes, or is that some kind of stage that people go through?
So my doubt actually came before the show ever went live. The first time that I listened to an episode that I recorded, it's episode number 2, but I recorded it first. I hated the sound of my voice. I was like, oh no, this show, can it? I'm done. I hate how I sound. I'm not. And again, I reached out to my podcasting community and they were like, we hate our voice too. And what I learned is most people don't like the sound of their voice, because how you sound to other people is different than how you sound to yourself. So when you speak, you think you sound one way, but when you actually hear your voice, it's very different. Mm-hmm. That was my biggest hurdle. After that, no. And part of it is everything that I do, and it's really big in my business, is understanding your why. I was very clear on my why I created my podcast. And Crowned Opulence in a lot of ways does go against the grain from what people say is the way that you should create a podcast. And I am unapologetic in how I've created it, and I will not change, at least up to this point. Now, maybe one day in the future, I'll have a different vision for the show. But right now, the show is the way that I want it to be. And I do make tweaks to it as I evolve, but the premise, my why behind the show is very clear to me. And so I did not have a challenge in not continuing. Like, that's never really been a thought in my mind. I have gone I started with 1 episode a week, and then I did go to 2. And I was like, that's a lot. So then now I'm back down to 1, but I'm very clear on my why for the show. So I never really wanted to stop.
I love that. Basically, you dealt with that before you actually went live. So when you say you went live, so how many episodes did you record before it went live?
I think when the show actually launched, the show launched with 3 live. So on launch day, which was Labor Day Sunday, 2020, there were actually, you could listen to 3 episodes. I want to say that I probably had 2 more. I don't like to record on the skin of my pants. So I really try to have several episodes out before I try to keep several episodes recorded. So like right now I have pretty much every episode with the exception of one recorded for the rest of 2021.
That's actually great because we've got 2 months ahead and you already have like everything sorted. And I think when I was looking into podcasting before, it was advised to have at least a few episodes. So when people come to your channel or to your podcast, they have more than one to listen to, which is great. Where can we find you?
So you can listen to the podcast on all major podcasting platforms. So that's Google Podcasts, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, Podbean, all those different iHeartRadio, Pandora, and then a lot of smaller ones that I'm not as familiar with are all the different ways you can listen to the show. You can go to the website, crownedopulence.com, and you can listen to the episodes that way as well. So yeah.
So can you just tell the audience again the name of the podcast?
It is called Crowned Opulence.
And I'm wondering, like, can you tell us why this name? And I will tell you why. Because me, as a not the native speaker, I heard this word first time from you, the word opulence. So I was like, what is this? I had to go and Google it. I love that. So I learned something new, and I wonder, probably other people wonder as well, like, why this name?
Yeah, so it's really interesting. So here in the US, there's a term that's used, and it's often used from mostly within the Black community, and it's called being bougie or called bougie. And I have been the bougie friend my whole life, and I don't really like the term. And as I was creating the podcast, one of my friends was like, "You're opulent." And it was not a word that I used very often. And once I started to research what the word meant, I was like, yeah, this is a pretty awesome word. And it so aligns to the whole point behind the show. And the intention with the show is really to help us as Black women to fix our crowns. So often the world, especially here, tries to knock it off of us and make us feel like we're less than. And oftentimes, just as people, we go through things in life and we think that we're the only ones that are going through it, and we keep it to ourselves. And it makes us really feel like we are alone. Yeah. And so one of the things that I wanted to do, like you mentioned in describing the show, is really to address those things, but to create a space that allows other Black women to see that you're not alone, and that the things that you're going through, you can really use to help yourself. And we can help each other if we support each other and get one step closer to living our most opulent life. And within that is freedom. Like, you get to decide what opulence means to you. You get to decide what this freedom looks like to you, and no one defines it for you. And to me, that is like the most freeing thing. And it's also kind of indicative of like the journey that we're on. Like, in life, you're constantly growing, you're constantly evolving. So what may feel like luxury and opulence today may be different tomorrow. And when you hear the word initially, by definition, opulence is affluence, it's wealth, it's grandeur. It's, things along those lines. But when you sit back and you think about it, what is wealth to you may be different than me. What is luxury to you may be different to me. And that's what makes it fun, is you get to really figure out what this means to you and own it. So that's where it came from.
I love the story behind it, and so I'm glad I was not the only one who had to go and like look for the meaning of this word. And I like that it makes you stand out, because I don't know if there is another podcast with this word opulence or opulent. To be honest with you, I haven't researched.
Not that I've seen. And one thing that I did want to add with this, and I kind of alluded to it before, when I first created the show. I don't know where she found me, but it was a white lady from, I don't know where she was from. And she's like, I listened to your show. And she's like, in the particular episode, we were talking about what it's like to work for corporate America as a Black woman. And she was like, I had no idea this is what it was like. She's like, this is horrible. It's not okay. I didn't know, but now I know. And I want to do something to help make things better. And that to me was the most amazing feeling in the world, in that my show helped educate somebody that I would have never probably met. I don't know where the lady came from. So I would have never met. You're an adult. I got the feeling she was older than me. So you went all this time in your life not knowing this. And because you listened to my show, you learned something, and you learned it to where you were motivated to do something differently. And of course, I don't know what she did, but that's how, to me, we start to change the world, and we make the world a better place. When we learn from each other and see what it's like, we're all different. We all go through different things, and seeing what it's like, then you can help be a part of the solutions to problems. And that was something that really meant, like, it was massive to me. Like, I was almost on the verge of tears, because that's like how you change things.
Absolutely. And I think it's beautiful when you get people tell you this and they message you and they recognize you for what you do, because you feel it's an amazing feeling, right? Like when you actually help someone, because you're an empath, you want to make impact in the world. So that's beautiful. And I have a question about your guests. So do they have something in common? Are they females who are entrepreneurs or who struggle with something in life, or is there something in common, like a common element?
So the only thing, to be honest, that is common is that they're mostly Black women. Like, I've had one person that was Filipino on the show, but that's the only thing that they have in common. They are entrepreneurs. They are employed by whatever company they work for. They're moms. They're not moms. They're married. They're divorced. They run the spectrum, and that is what I wanted. I wanted my show to be everyday women talking to other everyday women. And the reality is, anybody can listen to the show. Like, the episode that came out on Sunday is on domestic violence. And the woman that was my guest, she experienced domestic violence. She shared her story, and how she grew and overcame it, and now how she's using it to help herself and other women. The episode that comes out this coming Sunday is on destigmatizing mental illness. And we have a really, real conversation on what mental illness looks like, ways in which it develops in a person, really getting to the root of like what causes the stigma around it, interacting, and when you have someone that you love that has a mental illness, how to even protect yourself from possibly developing them. And so it was a really real conversation. So I'm looking forward to coming out on this Sunday. But we talk about so many different topics that I feel are relatable to people at different stages of their life, different things that they're going through. So to me, it's really encouraging just to hear how it's, just help different people. So I would say that's the only thing that's common. People have been very successful to just getting started. Like, that hasn't been a criteria. I just really wanted it to be everyday women helping other everyday women.
Well, that's so beautiful. And I like that. I like that it's a variety. It's like women from different stages of entrepreneurship, different levels. I would like to ask you mentioned your podcast comes out on Sunday. I guess that's every Sunday, so I can't wait to listen to it. Do you also address the current affairs? Like, for example, like last year there was a Black Lives Matters. Did you also start like doing, like reacting to that, like putting something out to support people? Because I know it's terrible, but there is a lot of abuse. And I feel when I speak to people that you Black women, you get even more abuse, which is so sad. and obviously it's not really shown, it's not talked about. So is that something that you also put in your episodes?
So sometimes they are timely, so to speak. So the first episode, but I recorded it the second, it was on voting and really helping people to understand voting in America. So oftentimes people will say voting and really so oftentimes people will say like our votes don't count, and they do. And this election was a really important election last year. And so it came out in September in hopes that it would give people enough time to listen and gain, additional education before November when election day happened. The episode around mental illness and domestic violence were initially meant to come out in October, and just due to scheduling, they didn't. Those months, or October is Domestic Violence Month, as well as Mental Health Awareness Month. So tying into things like that, I have done an episode on activism, and that was to tie into a lot of the things that have been going on in the US as more people, especially as a result of what happened in 2020 and a lot of things that we saw with the Black Lives Matter movement and things of the sort, wanting to become more active, but not necessarily knowing how, possibly, and also recognizing that activism today can look different than what it looked like in the 60s and 70s and things like that. So some episodes do, and then some don't. It's not meant to be like a political or current events type of show, but it just depends on when something happens, if I'm able to find a guest, also when we can get it recorded and scheduled. It takes a few different things to get the episodes to come out, so they may not always align, but it is definitely something that I do keep in mind and see if it's possible where it makes sense.
That's beautiful. And how many episodes are you on now?
We are on episode 71.
Oh, wow, that's awesome. And I think your main platform where you share about your episodes is Instagram, is it right?
Instagram and Facebook, yep.
What's your name on Instagram?
The Cassandra Alexis.
Love it. And do you send reminders to people via email so they can like go and watch your podcast?
I have not started doing that yet. That is something that I am going to start implementing in the very near future. I personally, being that I am a marketer, I personally believe that relying solely on social media for marketing your business is not the way to go. If you saw a few weeks ago when Instagram and Facebook kind of stopped working, that's happened a few times, your business no longer works. So I am very big on diversifying your online presence. So that is one thing that I am also going to implement myself within my own email list. But I'm also realistic that when you are an entrepreneur, you may have a lot of things that you want to do.
Yes.
But you may not always have the time, the bandwidth, the people to get everything done in the order that you want to. So just being mindful of that and giving yourself grace. But yeah.
Yeah, and it's all gonna fall in place. We are also catching up about this. So I'm so excited to support you with this and see you grow even more. I love to interview people who are successful, or at least have the successful mindset, because it's just so different. I don't know, but there are people who are just maybe cut out to be working for corporates, and they just have that mindset, which in my mind is a bit limited. And then there are the entrepreneurs where always see the possibilities, always see the success, even though it's a long way ahead, but they will get there, and you will get there as well.
Absolutely.
I've got one more question about your podcast, and that is that only interviews, or do you also do podcasts like just yourself talking?
So when the show started, it was only interviews. From September to March, I want to say. And then this summer, I started doing solo episodes. And so now I do a mix. Season 2 was 2 episodes a week. So Sunday was the guest interviews, and Wednesday was me doing solo episodes. Now I'm starting to mix them in a bit more. For me, solo episodes do take a lot out of me. For some reason, more so than doing a guest interview. My solo episodes are a lot shorter and they're easier, but they take a lot out of me. So, but now the show is a mixture of both. And part of it is just me getting out of my own way, to be honest. And that's part of this journey as a podcaster, as a creative, as an entrepreneur. Sometimes we just limit ourselves, and working through that, overcoming your own fears and things like that are really important. But yeah, now there are two types of formats.
Yeah, and we've done this leadership course together last year, the end of last year, and I think it's really like kickstarted you into going, like following your dream and really going full in. And I loved it. I loved it about you. And I've got so many questions, but we'll save some questions for the next episode because I would like to invite you back.
Yes.
Lastly, what would be your best advice for people who are thinking of starting podcasts or are not getting past through the 7 episodes?
Honestly, my best advice is to figure out your why. Like, if you want to do a podcast just because you want to try something different, okay, that's your why. And your result may be different because you just want to try it. Okay, you try it for a couple episodes and maybe you stick with it, maybe you don't. But being really clear on what your why is and understanding that and being true to it, because you will have different opportunities that come up. And if you're not truly clear on your why, you may start adding those things in and it doesn't align to your why. And then you get further and further and further away from it. So my biggest piece of advice would be really to start with your why. And the part of the reason why I say that is, like I said, I did not create my podcast in the most orthodox way. It's the opposite. People say, build your business, then create a podcast. I created my podcast before I had a business. People say, use your podcast to drive your business. That wasn't why I created my podcast. I now incorporate my business into my podcast because there is connection, like you said, helping women get the opulent outcomes in their life and business. So I bring them together, but still, my podcast will never be an all business podcast. That wasn't the point. So being really clear on your why, and I believe that will keep you going.
Oh, that's beautiful. And that why is really important in any sort of activity, whether it's business, whether it's marketing, whether it's creating something new. We always like start with the why. So I just want to thank you so much for all your information, all your advice, all your tips, and for sharing your story with us. I believe so. The podcast is on so many platforms. I use Spotify, Apple, there is also Google, and Pandora, many others. And your book can be found on Amazon as a best-selling book. So that's beautiful. We'll put a link in the chat. And I really believe that everyone who's watched today, they will go and check your podcast and they will really enjoy it and leave you 5 stars.
Thank you. Yes, take a listen to the show. Like it, subscribe it, leave a rating and review. Those things really, really do help the show, help people find the show and connect with it. So thank you so much for sharing your platform with me, giving me the opportunity to speak to your followers and your listeners, sharing more about the show, and just getting to talk to you. You know, I love you, dear.
Thank you so much. And also, I would like to mention, I heard from others that the downloads make a big difference, like download the episodes, right? That will help the show grow and be more seen and discoverable. So thank you so much. I will see you again and have a great rest of your day in Houston. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.